trying to relate to words. Males relate to words, of course. But the other half of our brain is using words. So we're, of course, going to relate to each other by using what's on the other half, right? The other side. We're going to use that. If we don't use it, we're only using half of our brain. So this is one of the reasons that guys throw things so much, like darts. And we throw balls a lot, right? And we bounce balls a lot. And we move around a lot. We move our bodies around. Like I'm wearing running shoes whenever I speak. We're moving around. Because we want to activate the right side of our brains. And so that's the spatial part, objects moving through space. So I'm going to throw this ball to you. So we like to throw balls to each other, right? Thank you. So, and we like to throw balls to women. We're not, we'll throw balls to anybody. We tend to like to throw balls around, we just like to move around. When we ask men, what is the thing you most remember about your relationship with your father? What are some of your fondest memories of how you related with your father? And of course, that's going to work for guys who had a father, so let's assume that. What is one of the most common things guys remember about their relationship with their father? What did they do together? Anyone know? Yeah. Fix the car. That's the mechanical part. I'm going to get to that. The spatial part is playing catch. So guys often remember that they and their father do something back and forth. Do something back and forth. Gender equal. We throw something back and forth with dad, and we would throw it back and forth. And the reason that guys remember it is because a lot happened, right? It wasn't just throwing a ball. They would talk about something. They would be out in nature. They would be thinking about their favorite baseball team or football team or soccer team or whatever was the sport. Then they'd be thinking about all the games they watched together. And all this stuff would happen in their brains while this ball went back and forth. Because they activated the right side, and it clicked all sorts of other areas of the brain and got them going. So then 30 years later, that's what they remember. They don't remember what they talked about necessarily, but they remember throwing the ball. So that's the spatial part. So on the right side of the male brain, we have a lot of active spatial. So in education or in parenting, like if you're trying to get your son, and this can work for girls too, to do homework, and he's not really doing much homework, you might like give him a ball squeeze, or have to throw a ball up and down, or throw a ball to him for about 5 minutes before he sits down to do the homework. Something to activate that part of his brain. If all we do is say to him, just sit down, do your homework, we haven't activated his brain, and he may not get much done. And we may get mad at him, and he may get mad at us, etc. Okay, so that's the spatial part. And then he said, and I used to love to fix the car. Is that right? Okay, he and his dad loved to fix the car. Okay, so that's a common one. Now, there can be women who love to fix cars. Of course, absolutely. However, something's going on. There's some reason that guys tend to like to fix things. And I'm going to show you a funny video clip about this, okay? And it shows you also some of the differences between the male and the female brain. All right, so I have to remember to turn this on, right? Just kind of turn this off. The thing is, I do think we need more volume. Can we get more volume? Okay, I'm going to shut this off. So this is a funny video clip that you can get on YouTube. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is on YouTube, so you can get this. My daughters and my wife sent this to me. When they saw it, they said, "You've got to show this at your talks." And keep in mind what I was saying about guys liking to fix things. What is going on with that?
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me most, that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
You do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail.
See, you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
it's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them. Ow!
Come on, if you would just
Don't.
Okay, so obviously it's having fun. I think we can all agree that she knows that she has a nail in her head. So she's not. It's a metaphor, right? They're having a metaphor. So she's smart enough to know she has a nail in her head. It's too accurate. But the metaphor is an interesting metaphor, right? It's interesting because, in a sense, if we know that we already know she knows she has a nail in her head, who in this video actually learns the lesson? It's the guy, isn't it? It's the husband. And what is the lesson he learns? Yeah, that she has a lot going on in her brain. And when she starts thinking about something, she's thinking about it and using words on both sides of her brain. And then those words are connecting to feelings and memories down here on both sides of her brain. So once she gets going, instead of fixing it right away, he needs to listen so that he validates her, right? So that she feels validated and not put down for having these feelings. And then she processes, right? She gets to process it, which is her absolute right. And then he reflects it back to her. Oh, that must be really hard. And then she says, yeah, it's really hard. They feel good, right? And that works. And then he can come in and fix them. So it's a big joke for couples, and it's actually a big thing guys have to learn if we want to stay married for a while. So I've been married 32 years, and my wife and I, Gail, got there because after about 5 years, I learned this, that I just could not fix things right away. I had to listen, validate, reflect back, then try to fix it. Well, guys have this drive to try to fix things. And I know people have wondered about it. So actually it's in the brain. And again, it doesn't mean women don't fix things. Of course they do. But this thing is pretty common throughout world cultures. So what's happening is her brain does fill up with all these words and all these feelings. And one of the things that happen is women use up to 10 times more white matter activity. So white matter is what connects the brain instantaneously. All these parts of the brain get connected through white matter. And so once she gets going, all these things are connecting. And this is a really big clue for working with girls, knowing that they're connecting all these things and using that. So she uses more white matter activity. Guys tend to use up to 7 times more gray matter activity. Gray matter happens in splotches. So in this case, what happens is he sees the nail. It goes into one part of his brain. He's really focused on the nail, and that's the part of the brain thinking about it. And he's not really listening to a lot of what she's saying, even though he should be. But he's not, because he's using this one part of the brain, and it's usually on one side. So often it's on the logic side of the brain, so it's the left side of the brain. He takes it in, and males, we tend to move our blood flow front to back. Females tend to move it between the two parts of the brain, but we tend to stay left or stay right. So his brain sees the nail in some part right around here, and he keeps moving the signaling front to back. He doesn't cross it over. So he's not crossing it over to the side of his brain that's doing a lot of emotion or empathy. He's thinking it out as a puzzle, as a problem to solve. And it goes back and forth on the left side and the logic side of the brain. And it's also got, if it's going to cross over somewhere, it's going to cross over to a mechanical part of the brain, which is the fix-it part of the brain. And that's what he gets focused on. And she's focused on something else. She's focused more on how she feels. And that is a big difference between males and females. And it doesn't mean we can't both do each other's, but that difference will be with us a long time. So this is a funny thing, but once we know what's going on, one of the ways that we can help girls, so I'm going to go back and forth between boys and girls. One of the ways we can help girls, especially in the middle school age, is to try to point out to them that their brain tends to do this. It's a great thing, but that what they do is they tend to create rumination loops. So rumination is thinking about the same thing over and over again, right? And they can be thinking about that in 3 or 4 parts of the brain and create a loop. And once they create that loop, they can get very worried, and they think about it and think about it and think about it. And it can definitely make them sort of dramatic and sometimes somewhat nasty and mean, like mean girls. That's a real phenomenon, as you all may know. And now with social media, of course, it's even worse, right? Because now they're sending a text, expecting a text back. If the text doesn't come back, they get mad. And so all the emotions are now amplified 2 or 3 times. And 20 or 30 years ago, we didn't have that. So we had nasty girls, but we didn't have social media, and we didn't have smartphones. So that's part of what's going on. And the problem with these rumination loops is that depression and anxiety can happen. And so one of the things to most try to help girls with is, okay, stop the rumination loop. You've thought about it, and that's the positive of what he's trying to do. You've thought about it. You've thought about it for 5 minutes. You've thought about it for 10 minutes. Now let's think about it. Let's problem solve it. How big a deal was it? Who really did what to whom? And that combination of all of the emotion and of the problem solving is actually good. It's actually a good thing to have both, rather than all of one or all of the other. Okay. So going back to the testosterone video, that's the spatial mechanical. And then the other thing that males are doing on the right is visual graphics. And we talked earlier with our teachers, we talked about this. And this is good for folks at home with guys. If boys or girls are having trouble with a writing assignment, have them draw what they're supposed to write about before they write. Have them draw before they write. So like take a yellow pad like this, and do this, this, and this. Give them 6 areas, 6 squares, and have them draw what they're supposed to write about. It's visual and it's graphic. Graphic means pictures. And the male brain really likes pictures. And the reason it likes pictures is because that's what we're doing on the right side. We're not doing words on the right. We're doing pictures, we're doing objects moving through space, and we're doing fixing things. That's what we're doing on the right. So we might as well exploit it. We might as well use it. And so that means we draw pictures before we write if someone needs that. And for girls who are having trouble with writing, it's a great strategy for them. We just tend to find more boys who are having more trouble with writing. Just as throwing objects back and forth, we tend to do it more with boys, but it's great for girls to build what we call the STEM brain. In other words, to build, for them to become better at engineering, for them to become better at these fields that we want to help them to become better at. If they don't do these things when they're young, when their brains are forming, college is a little too late. We're not going to see much of an increase of women working at the top of Google or the top of Oracle or any of these companies. We're not going to see much of a gain if we make these interventions in sort of high school, college. It's sort of too late. We just keep doing it. But the big interventions need to happen in the first 10 to 12 years of life, because that's the incredible time of brain growth. So the more girls move objects through space, the more they will develop these spatial centers. If they don't move objects through space, they're not going to develop these spatial centers. You've got to have these spatial centers to be good at the highest levels of sciences. Okay? So it's good for both boys and girls. Okay, all right. I'm going to show you a video clip of some babies. So two of the clips I'm going to show you tonight are old clips, and there's a reason I'm showing old clips. Part of the reason is I'm showing old clips, and then some of it I'll show you new versions 35 years later, and they show the same thing, and they're different races and from different parts of the world. Because part of what's important about this research is that it's transcultural. In other words, it applies to any culture. While every culture has an effect on everything, the brain differences come in on the X and the Y chromosome, so they come into every culture. So that's one reason, and there's another reason. And at the end of this one, you'll hear my other reason. So check out this video and see if you think that this makes sense.
At Rutgers Medical School, the researchers like to get their human guinea pigs young, before the world has left its mark on Extensive tests have shown that a sex difference in temperament shows up early. Babies are seated in front of a screen and are given a string they can pull to change the picture in front of them. Boys and girls learn equally fast, but they react differently when the switch they've learned to control is secretly disconnected. The boys keep pulling harder and harder. But with the girls, it's different. They get upset and give up.
I don't know why it stopped. Anyway, he ends it. It ends and it says the difference starts at 6 weeks. So it just lost a sense for some reason. Okay, so we're going to work our way back. The reason I I'm allowed to. The reason that I wanted to start with showing this one, even though it's old, is that this is an experiment that's been done all over the world over the last 35 years. So it's been done in Asia, it's been done in Europe, US, Canada, Australia. It's an experiment that people can do. They just need that equipment, and then they just have to put the happy face up and have a string. And so anyone can do it. But at the end of this, what did they say about the boys? Remember the sentence that they said? Yeah, the boys keep pulling harder and harder. Right, which is good science, it's an observation, and you do see that. Then what do they say about the girls?
They give up.
Yeah, they get upset and give up. Right, and it's true, they do cry quicker than the boys do on average. And so they do get upset, that's true. But I just want to talk about sort of gender stereotypes and how careful we have to be. Because when they say they give up, that sort of implies weakness. Like they got defeated, they gave up. But actually, they actually in some ways were even smarter than the boys. So I want to use this to show male-female difference, but also to say we have to be really careful. Because when we just say things, even the narration of the science-based program kind of makes the girls look weaker than the guys, which they're not. So we just have to be careful. But actually what's going on in their brains is the female brain moves more left to right, right to left. Female brain, the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres, is thicker and sends signals right to left. And then remember that the female brain uses more white matter activity, which sends signals instantaneously from one part of the brain to the other. So both these brains are pulling the string in the same part of the brain, right? Because that's a gray matter activity happening in a splotch of the brain, pulling the string. But when the string stops getting the happy face, one of those brains more quickly figures it out, right? The female brain more quickly figures it out, that this is not working anymore. I'm pulling the string, but it's not working anymore. And there's an advantage and a disadvantage to that. The advantage is obviously she more quickly figured it out, that she is going to be sad if she keeps doing this, and so she stops doing this. And probably one of the reasons that girls don't throw metal-pointed darts at each other and do these crazy things that guys do is that their brains very quickly figure out they could be in danger, right? That there's danger to throwing a dart at another face. That's dangerous. That's going to create something bad. I shouldn't do it. Whereas the guy is so focused on throwing the darts that he's not really processing. The parts of his brain that are processing danger, he's not processing it. He's getting so much reward from doing it. It feels so good to do it that he keeps doing it. But her brain, all this white matter moving the signal back and forth, her brain says, no, it's not a smart way to go. We're not going to throw darts. And her brain also says, I'm too young to be able to change this problem. I'm not going to get the happy face. So I need to do something about that. So what does she do? But she cries, yeah. So she cries to get help, right? So she's not really crying because she's giving up per se. She's crying to get help because her brain has quickly understood her situation. It's already moved forward. And so she cries and she gets help. And this is a great way of talking about the difference between our brain chemistries. The female brain, when it gets upset, it uses more oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical. So females, when they get upset, they will tend to reach into their bonding systems. And what that means is they'll tend to try to find people to help them. Even when they're depressed, even when females are depressed, they are more likely than males to try to find people to help them. When males get very depressed, what do males tend to do? What? Isolate. Males will tend to, right, and what males do is fight or flight. So some males, when they get depressed, will become more violent. And the males who are shooting up schools and killing people, like in Parkland and these places, all of them are depressed males. And the way their brains are wired, the way they've been traumatized, it comes through as violence. So one of these males do when they become severely depressed is they can become violent, fight, the fight mode. Other thing that happens is flight, withdrawal mode, isolation. And that also happens across cultures. And that comes in on the X and the Y. And the reason it does is that when males get upset, when males get feel hurt or are under stress, we flood with testosterone. So females flood with oxytocin, males flood with testosterone. Females flood with a tendon-to-friend chemical, and males flood with a fight or flight chemical. And I'll give you an example of how strange it can be in marriage. You can be able to, if you're in a, we're going to assume a heterosexual marriage, so we can do this male-female. I had some clients a few years back, maybe 10 years ago, who, where the guy, the husband, they had 3 kids. The husband had punched the wall right next to his, okay, we're having bells. He had punched the wall right next to his wife's head, which is obviously very scary. So he had not hit her, but he had punched the wall next to her head. So they came in for counseling. And I had assumed, as I think they had assumed, that this would be a very long counseling, and that it would be a long counseling relationship. They needed a lot of help, and maybe even they would move for a divorce, because that's a pretty violent act, you know. But as we sat down together and we talked, I ended up only seeing this couple 3 times. And I later saw them in the grocery store, and the kids were grown, and they were still married. And what had happened? Now, in other cases, that might have been domestic violence, but in this case, it was an interesting case study of the difference between male and female brain. So what would happen is they would get upset, and they would have a conflict, like every couple does. They would argue. And when they argued, his brain would go into fight or flight mode. He was not very good with words. He had not much left brain and connectivity with emotive and sensorial centers. He was an engineer. He wasn't really great at that, at the emotive side. So his brain was already sort of set. And then he would add on the testosterone when they got into conflict. So they became a conflict. His testosterone would go up. Most of his verbal centers would shut down. But the exact opposite happened to her. She was incredibly verbal and could connect words to feelings instantaneously, could move stuff around her brain instantaneously. And her oxytocin, her bonding chemical, would go up when they got in a fight, which is what happens for all of us. Males tend to get more fight or flight, females more bonding, and we have to be in the middle. Well, in their case, she would talk about what worried her, and she didn't realize that his verbal centers were shutting down and he was getting overwhelmed, and she would talk a long time. She would use a lot of words and accuse him of things, and she would just keep going, and he would get more and more, he would pull away more and more, right? Fight or flight. So what he mainly did is flight. He would just pull away. He would go like this, and say, I don't understand all that stuff. And then he would actually physically start walking away. But that hurt her feelings, right? How did she feel? She felt like he didn't understand her, she wasn't being validated, her feelings weren't being validated. So she felt abandoned. So every time he would walk away, what would she do? You can imagine, right? She's following him, right? And trying to get him to talk. But he shut down. And his fight or flight chemical was up, and her tendon-to-friend chemical was up. She wants to tend to her friend, and he wants to fight or flight. So unfortunately, on this occasion, instead of withdrawing, he got so mad that he punched the wall. And what he was trying to do was to say to her, I can't handle it. I can't process this, I can't handle it. You have to give me a half hour, stop talking to me. And so that's why I only saw them 3 times. We ended up figuring that out and ended up helping them understand it. So the deal they made was she would talk and express herself, and he would say something like, okay, I get that, but now I'm getting overwhelmed. Give me a minute. He would go away. He would go away for like 10 minutes. He couldn't go away for long. He would go away for 10 minutes. He would try to think about it, and he would come back, and they would talk some more. And the most he would go away was a half hour. He would come back, they would talk some more. And so they made a compromise between fight or flight and tend to friend. And unfortunately for them, a really high fight or flight guy married a really high tend to friend woman. And so they took a lot of work to figure out what to do. So that's an example. It's just an example of when fight or flight happens, and tendon to friend happens. And so when girls get under stress, their tendon to friend chemical comes up, and it's one of the reasons that they are ruminating and they're trying to bond. But the dark side of that oxytocin is that they'll do what's called merging. And this is the basis of girl drama. They're separate cells, there's 2 or 3 of them, and they're separate, but they gradually merge. So like my daughter merges, sort of psychologically merges, becomes one with her friend. And they are best friends, and they're like one person. And that's one of the reasons that when my daughter texts her friend Anna, and her friend Anna doesn't text her back, she freaks out about it, because they become one person. And how long can someone be one, right? It can't last very long that way. Because you're not really learning boundaries. And between 10 and 20, one of the biggest lessons girls can learn, and boys, is boundaries. You've got to learn boundaries. If they have not learned boundaries by the time they're 20, they could end up with a really hard adulthood, because they don't know how to be with someone and not lose themselves. And obviously the first year or 2 of a relationship, there's a lot of stuff going on for you to merge, so you can become one. We all know what that is. But at a certain point, that's going to be somewhat gone. And if you're going to the relationship to last, you can't be merged. You have to be like this. And so I think the plus side of girl drama is that if we talk to our girls about it and explain to them what they're doing, they're merging, tending to friend. The plus side is we can help them to learn boundaries. And they can realize, okay, all that happened was she didn't text me back. That's really all that actually happened, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that we can also get from this video is, and another thing we can give girls, is those guys who kept pulling the string. And this is a STEM school, so this is a really important message for all of us in this work. If we want girls to later succeed in fields like inventions, right? So most inventions are created by men. Right? They are. Statistically, most inventions are by men. And there's always a lot of conversation about why is this? Well, in some cases, we can certainly argue that there's gender bias. That guys create businesses with other guys in them, right? And then, so these guys keep inventing things, these guys do that. So that's absolutely true. At the same time, there are a lot of women running businesses and a lot of women in corporations, but they're still not inventing as many things per head, per capita, as the guys are. So what's the science behind this? Well, some of the science behind this is that the female brain sees so many options because of the white matter activity that it doesn't stay focused in one gray matter area. So one gray matter area. And this guy, he keeps pulling the string. He pulls the string, he pulls the string. He fails at it, right? He fails at pulling the string because he doesn't get the happy face, but he keeps doing the same thing over and over and over and over. Fails, does it again, fails, does it again, fails, does it again. And then the 51st time he does it, he invents a new operating system. So how did he invent a new operating system? He had to fail 51 times. And one of the great messages for our girls, especially if we want them to get really good at STEM, is that like technology and engineering are fields that require heavy gray matter focus and a lot of failure. So girls have to fail a lot. They have to learn to enjoy failing, learn from every failure. And of course, sometimes that can be hard for girls, not always, but sometimes, because they would rather have it organized and have it figured out before they jump in. But it can't get organized and figured out sometimes. Sometimes you have to jump in and fail. Do it as an experiment, and then learn from the experiment. And sort of statistically, we find that more guys are doing that because they operate out of one or two gray matter areas for what they're going to do. They're not distracted by other stuff. And when they fail, they go, oh, that blew up. Okay, I guess those two chemicals don't react well together. So instead of stopping after blowing up the basement, they find new chemicals and put them together. And then they blow up the basement again, and they clean it up, and they do it again, and then they finally figure the thing out. And I think it's a great gift. That's why, like I said, I have 2 daughters who are now grown. But that was part of how I spent my life, was trying to get them to fail more. And to not worry about it if they fail. Don't worry about it. Great. You're messy. Great. So that's another sweet lesson I think we get out of this. All right. Now I'm going to show you some scans. So I'm going to show you some PET scans. So this is an old kind of scan that shows the brain differences really well, and we don't use these as much anymore because it's expensive technology. But these old ones are really good. So check this out. Hold on. Oh, I got to turn this. All right, I'm back. It's killing me.
At Rutgers Medical School, the researchers like to get...
Sometimes it gets very hot.
You can see that the amount of activity in resting women is about as high as the amount of activity in thinking in men who are working on problems. Straightforwardly, it would mean that the rate of neural firing is higher and the rate of activity is greater. So presumably there is more going on in the resting female brain and in the resting male brain.
Okay, I'm going to let you watch. I'm going to start that at the beginning. It didn't want to start. Okay, for some reason it does not want to start at the beginning. Not happy. Okay, well, I'll leave these up here. It doesn't want to start at the beginning, but it doesn't matter. This is where we end up. Oh, wow. This system changes the colors. This is Jessica. Where's Jessica? You were telling me this. Jessica did warn me that this system changes colors around. So, but I think you can still see it. Yeah, I think you can. So these are pets. You know, are we saying that colors are going to change? You were right. She was right. So on this computer, you can see on this computer different colors than you see up on the screen. Okay, but I'm going to interpret it, or I'll interpret it. So these are all female brains on the bottom. These are all male brains on the top. Okay, female on the bottom, male on the top. I'm going to start here. That says SPAT. So SPAT means spatial. So that's moving objects through space, throwing balls, right? And that also means technology and engineering. And while for some reason it's not playing as I want it to, I'll tell you what's here. What's here in the female brain when she's doing a spatial task, like an engineering task, what you see in her brain is the whole brain lights up to do that task. And the male brain, you see a lot of blue. Blue means there's no blood flow in those parts of the brain. So the male is focusing his activity to do that task in these parts of the brain. Female is spreading the activity throughout the brain. So I know you can't see it, but that's what's happening. And that's one of the things we're studying. The female brain tends to do things with more white matter activity, so spreads it out throughout the brain. And some of the STEM stuff that we want her to succeed in, we got to get her to quiet the white matter activity and just focus in the gray matter areas that do spatials, like objects moving through space. Okay, and that actually wasn't the main thing I wanted to do, but just keep that in mind. Okay, now this is the verbal task, VERB, VERB. Female brain here, male brain here. They're always doing the exact same task, all right? So males and females are doing the same task. And then they put the equipment on and scan them. So here's a female doing a reading, writing, or speaking task using words. So reading, writing, or speaking task. You can see that her whole brain lights up except for this little space her brain lights up to write a paper, to read a book, or to talk, right? Now there's the guy doing the same reading, writing, or speaking task. And you can see that, you've got maybe a third of the brain has the yellow, orange, which is the primary blood flow, but much of the rest of the brain doesn't have blood flow. So she's doing that, right, like that task of writing. We were talking about writing something. She's doing it throughout her brain, and she's more instantaneously able to access words, connect words, especially to feelings, but to other senses and memories. It's going to take him longer, and he's not going to use as much of his brain to do it. And that's one of the reasons that these strategies we talk about, like squeezing balls, going up and down, moving around, that these strategies are so much, with verbal tasks, such a big deal for guys to try to activate more of their brains so they can catch up and look a little more like this, even though they'll never look like this. Okay, I think with the colors you can still see it, right? Yeah, okay. And then here, says BASE, BASE. So this BASE means baseline. So baseline is what we call a rest state. So where the brain kind of zones out. It sort of zones out. And here is the female brain zoned out. So this is the female brain board. So at least half of the brain is yellow and orange. So it has active blood flow in half of her brain, even though she's zoned out. And there's the guy. So the male is like this. The male has primary blood flow kind of down here in digestion and breathing, basically down here. And much of the rest of the brain is empty of blood flow. There isn't blood flow. So, like, what's a situation where this would happen? When we talked earlier today about when girls and boys get bored. This is what the female brain looks like when she's bored. But when he's bored, most of his brain is blank. But when she's bored, half of her brain is still active. And that happens across cultures, comes in on the X and the Y. Really no, whatever basis your culture is, whatever ancestry, this holds true. So it's something we got to think about. So as teachers, we think about it a lot. We got to engage all of our students. So of course, we got to keep guys from going into this rest state where their eyes start to flutter, they get really bored, they look like they're going to fall asleep, because if that's happening, they're not going to remember directions, they're not going to do well, they're going to get bad grades. But at home, it's an important thing for us too, because now we know that there's a difference between males and females. And so if the guy is trying to do a homework assignment and he's bored, then he's retaining pretty much none of what's in that homework assignment. So might as well get him active, get him moving around, play some basketball, do something to get his brain so it doesn't look like this. Because if it looks like this, not much is going to happen. Now, I'm not sure we would say that one of these brains are better or worse. People like to joke that the male brain is worse because it doesn't have activity, but I think a lot of women would like to, right? Like to shut their brains off. Do you sometimes envy guys that they can shut their brains off? Whereas women sort of never shut their brains off. Well, if you got 10 times more white matter activity in your brain, it's hard to shut your brain down. It's just going to be hard. Okay, everyone, that makes sense? I know for some folks it may be, I don't know how the translation is going, but hopefully that makes sense. And now I'm going to show you brain scans in a simpler way, but they're just not as, there's not as much to them, but these are the same scans I showed earlier today. So now here are female brain and male brain, showing the same thing that the colors showed 35 years ago. The ones with color, the PET scans, were with African-based folks, so African American. These are actually Latino, okay? Show the same thing. So clearly some things are in the brain, and while culture matters for a lot, some of this stuff, this culture is not affecting this stuff. This stuff we're all bringing into our classrooms and everywhere. And this is one of the reasons same-sex is so great, because same-sex education, all the teachers get trained in it, and they go deep into it, and they form classrooms that fit the male brain and the female brain. And they have the permission to do that. They're inspired to do that. They have the talent to do that. And they have skills to do that. And so boys and girls can learn in ways that is a good fit for their brains, right? And so the people teaching the boys-only classes are going to get, and I gave them a book today, and these books have all these strategies to keep boys from falling into this rest stage. Because once they fall in, they're not learning. So the teachers will have them move around and have them squeeze these squeeze balls. And do you guys use fidgets here? Are they as popular here as no fidgets? So you got rid of the fidgets. Did they come in with fidgets at a certain point?
Yeah, they're popular for a while.
Yeah, and you guys are none of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually was not really pro fidgets because I think they're a little bit distracting. But the reason they were popular, right, is that they were keeping that brain, right, keeping the brain going. It's just they kind of overdid it. But whatever are the innovations, we got to practice those innovations. And so you at home, you now know this, so you can support the teachers and support yourselves and support your kids by doing some of these things. So just sit down, do your homework. That may not work. All right. Now I'm going to show you a controversial video clip, and I want to talk to you about this. Well, here I'll show you this really sweet clip that gives you 5 ways boys do things differently. And so this is a mom who has 4 sons, and she works for the Arizona Republic. Her name is Gurian Talk. She's a really nice person, and I met her because I went in to do a Helping Boys Thrive event there in Phoenix, and she did a story on it in the Arizona Republic. But she also said, "Hey, I created this video after coming to your event. I created this video for you," and she said she gave me permission to show it to other people, and I think it's a really neat way of condensing some of these differences. Check it out. It's very short. Okay. So I'm a student tutor, and if someone wants to make one who has 4 girls, please send it to me and I'll show that. It just so happens this mom has 4 boys, so she did it through the lens of the boys. It also sets up something that circles back to the beginning and that sets up this next video clip. Do you notice she said boys tend to like teasing, and in fact they seek it out in order to fix weaknesses? Did you notice that? Okay, so now obviously some boys are very sensitive, and if you tease them at all, they collapse. So absolutely, we know that. And we think about 1 in 5 boys who come into the category of sensitive, a very sensitive boy. So we want to just know that and agree on that. At the same time, males do tend to seek out, and they do tend to tease. And I call it, just like they throw darts at each other. These are aggressive behaviors. They're aggressive, but they're really loving. And this is kind of the deep dichotomy. If we're going to understand boys and create environments that are boy-friendly and bring out the most out of boys, we've got to deal with this thing. This thing, which is that guys practice what I call aggression nurturance more than girls do. Girls can be quite aggressive, absolutely. But if you study 100 boys and 100 girls, you're going to see that boys are doing more of this stuff. This more aggressive love, the wrestling, the throwing the darts, etc. And then they're showing love through that. So it's nurturing. It's aggression nurturance. They're nurturing through aggression. And girls tend more toward empathy nurturance, which is that they tend to see pain in others or feelings that others are having, and they tend to want to get involved in those feelings and nurture those feelings. And both of these can cross over, of course, and they're both really, really neat. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So when on my around the corner from my house, there were a bunch of kids between 10 and 12, so right around middle school age, who were playing street hockey. So they had on rollerblades and they set up 2 nets. and they were playing street hockey. And this 11-year-old boy fell down, and this girl right here came straight over, stopped playing the game, just came straight over, and said, "Are you okay? Are you all right? What do you need?" Right? So she just came right next to him to try to give him what we call empathy nurturance. She immediately empathized with his pain. He was holding his knee. She empathized with it, and she just wanted to be there for him and help him in any way he needed. So that's really beautiful, beautiful. And that we can certainly say that must have helped raise his self-esteem and get it back. Okay? But this boy did it a different way. He comes from over here, and he sees the guy has fallen, that's his teammate, and he sees that this kid is not dead. He's not dead. So he comes by and he says, get up, we need you. And he goes away. Now on the surface, you might say that's not very nurturing. But I would argue that's just as nurturing. It's just nurturing in a different way. If he had just said, get up, you know, and said some mean thing, okay, that's not very nurturing. But he said, get up, we need you. So what he wanted was for the boy, number one, to push through whatever weakness he was feeling. And number two, to realize that if he wants self-esteem, the self-esteem will come by being part of the successful group and by sacrificing himself for the success of the group. That's where his self-esteem will come from. He can't be an individual, whining individual. He's not dead. He's got to get up and he's got to help the group, and that's how he wants self-esteem, because he's needed, right? He's needed. Okay, so how is it that this difference can exist and that we all, I think, can kind of recognize it? And why? One of the reasons the difference exists, obviously, is that this girl comes over because what chemical is flooding in her now? She sees the boy fall, her oxytocin goes up, right? Her bonding chemical goes up, so she's flooding with a bonding chemical. So she's coming over to bond. Just like if any of you coach, those of you who have daughters, did any of you coach your daughters in soccer? Did anybody coach their daughters in soccer? Okay. Every father I've talked to, and mother I've talked to who coach their daughters in soccer, always laughs about this. When the daughters are about 5, and you start coaching them, and one of them falls down, what do all the girls do? They all bunch together to try to help this fallen daughter. And the coach, it's often a dad, is saying, no. He's slapping his head and saying, no, she'll take care of herself. You have to pursue the ball, right? And these 5-year-old girls are saying, no, but she's hurt. And it's a battle between this, usually a male coach like me, and these girls. But they're hit with this oxytocin, so they're bonding, so they go bond with the girl. They don't care about the ball. They're bonding with the girl. Okay, so that's one reason that this happens with this girl. The other reason is that when females and males see pain, something different happens in our brains. When females see someone else in pain, the insula, which is right in here, swells up with mirror neurons, and mirror neurons are neurons that create a mirror in my brain so that I can feel your pain. And boys do it too, men do it too. Our insula swells up and fill up with mirror neurons. But the male brain kills off the mirror neurons within seconds. The female brain, the mirror neurons keep going. They can go on for minutes. They can go on for an hour or two. Obviously, her brain at a certain point will go, okay, he's okay. And even though she still has the mirror neurons for his pain, she'll say, he's okay, help him up, and then they'll move on. But for her, the mirror neurons, she's mirroring all of that pain in her brain, and that takes over her brain more than it does this guy, who has the mirror neurons for a second, looked at the fallen boy and said, nah, he's fine, and killed off the mirror neurons and said, get up, we need you, right? So the female brain and the male brain are set up differently for empathy. And I think that's at the core of what we have to understand, that guys, one of the reasons fathers are so valuable, and so much research shows that fathers are so needed and so valuable, so that girls and boys can both succeed. It's not about the mom. The mom's already known to be valuable. We're trying to figure out, why is the dad so valuable? Well, one of the reasons he's so valuable is he does it differently than she does. And he shows his nurturance differently. So she nurtures how she nurtures, but he may be nurturing in this other way, and we need that other way. It's aggression nurturance that builds resilience and builds grit. So one of the reasons he can do that is he doesn't have all these mirror neurons that are flooding him. He kills them off fast. Okay, so this different way of empathizing is something that's important to study, and any school that's that's already deeply into male-female and that's going deeper in again will be sort of at the forefront of helping our culture understand how guys nurture each other and the kind of nurturing they need. And so I'm going to show you a video clip from a friend. So his name is Michael Thompson, and some of you may have heard of him. He doesn't do as much on boys anymore, but he wrote a book back in 1999 called Raising Cain. Right, you guys know that book. And he's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. He's about 10 years older than me. He's about 70 now. And when they did Raising Cain, a few years later, they made a video of it for PBS. So I'm going to show you a 4-minute video clip of how Japan raises its kids, and especially its boys. And then I want to talk to you about it. And so we're going to get another culture in here.
Of course, adults must intervene if kids are in danger. But too often, even the smallest act of aggression rings adult alarm bells, as if it were adult violence. But is that the only way to handle it? To try to answer this question, I've come to Arizona State University in Tempe to visit anthropologist Joe Tope. For more than 20 years, Joe's been studying the ways that preschools in Japan handle boy aggression, and what he's found may come as a real surprise to the average American parent.
Look at this clip, the most notorious moment in our study. This is after lunch, and the kids are sitting out on the balcony. The teacher is just inside, 10 feet away. And Hiroki in the overalls here, here's Satoshi, the boy in yellow.
The teacher's not there, but she's not doing anything. In fact, she's ignoring him. What's Satoshi supposed to do?
He goes back and wants satisfaction from Hiroki, so he will now reaches over to Hiroki with his ninja throwing star. He's made his aluminum foil from lunch into a ninja star.
Of course.
As you would. Now he holds his hand out. Hiroki's now is going to, with his bare foot, is going to step on Satoshi's hand. And Satoshi starts sobbing, but Midori to the rescue. Midori comes over, leads him away from Hiroki, and talks to him. And she says, "What happened?" Of course, she knows what happened. She was watching. He says, "Yeah, Hiroki, he punched me, then he stepped on my hand."
Yes.
She repeats it, "Yeah, he got stepped on by Hiroki." And the other girl says, "That always happens when you play with Hiroki. If you don't want to get hurt, play with someone else next time." American teachers who see the footage of the non-intervention mostly are horrified because they feel that their prime directive is that nobody be hurt in their classroom. And they feel that you have to intervene for 2 reasons. 1, to protect children from being hurt. 2, to protect children from developing bad habits. The Japanese approach, which I endorse, is if you start when you're young, communicating to them that they are responsible for their interactions with each other and into the social climate of the classroom, they will learn to take responsibility for it.
So they will teach each other conflict resolution if we're not intervening.
When you ask Japanese teachers what's the most important reason to have preschool, or to send kids to preschool, they don't say academics. That's just 1%. Their top answer is children need a chance to learn to be a member of a group.
So Japanese preschools have a different attitude towards boys' aggressiveness. And as Joe discovered when he returned in 2002, there's also a higher expectation of boys' ability to empathize, to have an emotional connection with other children.
Every day after nap time, 5 or 6 of the older kids go downstairs, and they're called monitors. Now, the older boy has taken the 2-year-old boy to the urinal, and he says, "Pee, please." And the younger boy starts to pee. He helps him pick his shirt up, because he's afraid he's going to pee on his shirt.
Right.
These things happen. Then he says, "Is it coming out?" He says, "Anything left in your pee-pee?" And he says, "Okay, now I'm going to flush."
Yeah.
He flushes. What I love about this is teaching at its finest.
Right.
This young older boy is teaching a subject matter he knows a lot about and loves.
Right.
He pretends to be afraid of the sound of the flush. He's young enough to remember what it must be like to be both excited and afraid of the sound of the flush. So he performs with the younger boy this excitement and fear. And then he says, like, "Oh, we're not afraid." And when I asked them why do you let the older kids play with babies, they said we'll do it for the same thing for kids. Because if you don't take care of a younger kid when you're yourself young, you may miss a critical period for developing homoiati, is the word to mean something like empathy.
Here's a wonderful example of children resolving a conflict on their own. After the boy hits her, the girl walks away. Will she call the teacher? No, because the boy literally puts himself at her level to show her he's sorry. This doesn't mean that Japanese schools are perfect. Bullying becomes a serious problem in older grades. But schools here seem to be less frightened of young boys than U.S. schools, where even a young boy's violent fantasies can sometimes get him into trouble.
So there's actually a lot in that portion of the video that gets us thinking. Would we say that we tend to intervene a lot in our child raising here in the U.S.? We sort of intervene a lot, right? We sort of set up a system for intervening. So the famous term for it now is helicopter parent. That's the famous term for it. But all of us have done it, where we think if one of them hits the other, we gotta get right in there and intervene and stop it, because maybe that's bad. And to some extent, what we do is we trust ourselves more than we trust the kids to raise themselves up. And our ancestors, all of our ancestors, no matter where we're from, the parents were busy. They didn't spend much time raising the kids up. The kids had to raise each other up. And the parents provided, and the extended family provided a structure. And it was just kind of a perimeter. And the kids raised themselves up inside the perimeter. But things have switched, especially here. And it's not true of every culture. Some of, especially Latino-based cultures, some of y'all do understand this more than actually some Caucasian cultures. But at the same time, when it comes to boys, I think we all kind of overreact a little bit to boys. And we get scared of what might be normal behavior. And I think part of the message of this is that a lot of the times we get scared because we think they're not showing empathy in the way we want them to, when they are showing empathy, but we have to study how they're showing it. Like the kid at the urinal. The kid at the urinal. There was a lot transmitted between that older boy and the little 2-year-old boy, between the 4-year-old, 5-year-old boy, and the 2-year-old boy. A lot happened. And there were no words spoken except "pee, please." That's the only word spoken. But a lot happened. The older boy mirrored the excitement of the machine going with the water spraying, and all of that got mirrored, and all sorts of nurturing happened. But there were very few words. And yet I would say it's just as nurturing as if someone had said, "Use your words, let's talk," which is a great way to go. But this was just as nurturing. And similarly, that teacher never intervened in this stuff. And of course, we might be dealing with some guys who are hyper-aggressive. You got to intervene. Who lack character. You got to intervene. So that's absolutely true. But at a kind of baseline, we might want to think about how much we intervene. And every time we intervene, we take the responsibility for behavior off of the child, and we move the responsibility for behavior onto us. And in the end, we will create immature adults because they won't have really had the responsibility for their own self-improvement, their own behavior, their own nurturance and relationships. So it's something I think we all have to think about. And then with boys, we have to double think about it, because with boys, we tend to think that the way they're nurturing is not right, because they're not using words, and they're using more spatial kinesthetic stuff, more physical stuff, more bumping and wrestling, and stuff that may especially scare some people. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Gary.
Okay.
So also for parents know that next year one of our large endeavors that we're taking on is peer mediation. It works when students are part of the mediation process. So that, just like we saw in those videos, the students are helping one another deal with conflicts. Okay, right now we have a restorative justice teacher who runs circles, which works great. but there's not, the interactions between the kids are different when an adult is making those interactions happen. So when we have trained peer mediators, which are kids that are trained to help one another deal with that, then you're going to see more of that, where the kids are taking responsibility for the community and for one another. So I just wanted to put that out. We're doing that.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you're doing that. And do you find that in the circles, like say right now they're co-ed circles?
No.
Or are they boy only?
No, they're boy, girl, they're advisory.
Okay. And has anyone if you haven't done it already, next year study the interactions. What do the boy only groups do when they are doing these circles, and what do the girl only groups do?
They're single word circle.
With the boys? Okay, she said when it's the boys circle, it's single word answers. Well, of course, that's not going to work as well for boys, right? The restorative justice techniques for boys, whoever's teaching that's going to have to expand the way they teach it, do more things where they're moving around, more physical stuff, use more music, right? And whoever's doing that, hopefully will see that and we'll get some training in that, because circles, if they're done for boys, have to be done differently than they're done for girls in order to get the same result. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Okay, so that was just a sort of a point I wanted to make that maybe all of us know at a gut level, but that I think we have to, every individual school has to become a kind of ambassador for, what is best in girls and what is best in boys. And I would argue that a lot of what is best in boys, we have to go out in the culture and be ambassadors and tell the culture that this stuff is actually good. It's not toxic, it's actually good. It can be managed well and directed well, and it's actually a very good thing. Okay, so let's take some questions. I know for some people it's a second language, but don't feel intimidated and ask a question, and someone will help us translate it. Is that how we're doing it?
Yes, I will.
And you will translate. Okay, but here's in English.
So the thing about boys being, showing love by bumping into each other and wrestling and stuff, I noticed that like the boys who, they call it tattling, but the boys who tell the teacher, like, we tell them they're supposed to, like the school tells them that they're supposed to, they lose respect amongst the other boys, then they get even like messed with more, or like shunned, or something.
They're supposed to what?
They're supposed to, like, if they get like paper thrown at them or something.
They're supposed to tell
They
them.
like immediately like be like, so like, let's say somebody like bumps into them and like, I don't know, they kind of mess around. Like maybe it's not like love per se, but they're just kind of like testing each other, I guess.
Right.
So like they kind of like, they test each other for like toughness or see if they can hang, see if they're cool or something. And then the boys who do what we tell them, which is like, tell us when somebody hits you, tell us when somebody messes you, those are the ones that have trouble socially among the other boys.
Sure. Oh, good point. So did anyone hear that? The folks who were, or should I repeat? Could you hear that? No, so I'll repeat. Okay, she's saying this is a great case. She's saying that the boys are told that if someone else knocks into them or does something like that, or throws something at them, that they are supposed to tell the teacher, because that's bad behavior. They're supposed to tell the teacher. But the problem is when the boy tells the teacher, the boy loses status in his group and sometimes can be picked on, right? Ostracized, right? And which is normal. The thing is, that's really unfortunate and normal. I mean, I know that all of our inclination is to try to get kids to make other kids accountable to us, right? That's why we're doing it. And I think to some extent it has to be. If a kid is being bullied, he has to get help for that. So we're not talking about bullying behavior right now. That's different. Yeah.
And that's the thing, I think the schools are calling everything bullying
Right.
behavior. And
That's
some
where
of
I'm about to go. Yeah.
Some of it.
Yeah, this is a battle we're fighting nationwide, and every community has to make its own decisions about this. It has to figure out what it thinks is the line between aggression and violence. And because our culture is so confused about those two things, we've lumped them all together. So we lump this aggression nurturance into violence. And as you said, it's all bullying. It becomes that consciousness. But as we can see tonight, it's not. We have to make a decision. And so, for instance, the boys who are telling on the other boys for bumping and that stuff, that's actually unnatural to male development. to tattle. Male development doesn't want that. It wants to work things out itself between each other. And the adults are only used for the stuff where the adults have to enforce the line between aggression and violence. That's how we're kind of set up. The adults don't exist to intervene all the time. The adults exist to make sure every child knows the line between aggression and violence. And knocking another kid into a locker or a playful punch of another kid, or et cetera, is not violence. So let's make the distinction. And any of you who want more help, by the way, with this stuff, everything I'm saying tonight, The Minds of Girls Does Girls, Saving Our Sons Does Boys, they're very new, and unfortunately, those two books are not translated into Spanish, but a number of my books are. So I think like 15 of my books are translated into Spanish, and probably 10 of them I make this distinction. So the distinction is that aggression is one person or one organism or one system, like a nation, that is challenging another. Challenging another. That's aggression. So can I use this? Could you stand up? Okay, you won't mind if I do. So when I bump into, so we'll go shoulder to shoulder. Okay. So I come over to her and I go like this. Thank you. I would argue I'm challenging her. There's not violence to her. I'm challenging her. What do I? And what do I want her to do back?
If we're gonna be friends, like get you back.
Right. So then I want her to not get to me. Right? Because I've challenged her, and I want to empower her. And that's what challenge is. It builds resilience. So I challenge her. She has to challenge me back. That builds up more resilience in me and more resilience in her. That's aggression. And it's really healthy. But obviously, I'm not going to do it. But if I punch her in the face, that's violence. So what's the difference? When I punch her in the face, what I'm trying to do is destroy her. Right? I'm trying to destroy her. There's something about her that scares me, and I want to destroy it. And so, like domestic violence, when one person is beating the other person, usually he, although women do it too, is trying to destroy that other person. I'm so scared of this other person, I need to destroy her. And that's the difference. So violence is when one organism or one system is trying to destroy the other one. Aggression is challenge. I'm trying to challenge. So for me, that's the distinction, and that's certainly what I teach wherever I go. But I ask every community to talk about it, because the kid not telling on the other kid isn't going to work if that kid is going to go home and tell mom and dad, and then mom and dad are going to sue the school because one kid knocked into the other kid. So the parents have to agree, we're not going to sue the school if kids do normal aggressive stuff. So obviously the school and the parents, everyone has to talk about this and make this work, because I think one of the reasons one of the reasons that schools are kind of forced into making these policies of getting kids to tell on each other is because parents are suing schools, and the schools have to protect themselves. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we make those distinctions here by calling this still community. It's our family. So what we say is to students, if you see somebody being bullied, what does bullying mean? It means that one is participating and the other one does not want to. That's the difference. So if this boy is picking on this other boy and this boy doesn't want it, then somebody needs to speak up and protect that victim. On the other hand, we see this all the time in lunch supervision. These kids are piling on one another, chasing them around. Girls are chasing, hitting boys, and blah, blah, blah. This goes on constantly in middle school, and we're there to kind of referee. Hey, too much of that, you're gonna hurt one another, let's not do that. But it's something that just goes on naturally. Some of the students here, they know, they see it all the time. 90% of the conflicts between, and boys and girls, by the way, do it too. And some of that is, I like you, so I'm going to hit you, or I'm going to push you, or I'm going to grab you. So that is all natural. I think the conversations are, hey, we don't want this to go on, and then somebody turns, and then somebody goes, boom, by mistake, and all of a sudden now we got to fight. And so that's 9 times out of 10. That's how fights start. Is the aggression part becomes something else. So that's something that we're constantly monitoring here at the school and keeping it in check. But you are right, the distinction between the two is very different.
And so is there a way to do that, which is wonderful that you're doing that, and then kids not these kids not have to tell on each other because those kids, as soon as one kid tells on the other kid, his status just goes so low, and it could take him months to get his status
I
back.
think he's doing the right thing, like they're trying to be good.
Right, he's trying to be good. So is that also happening? Like, is there a way to teach the kids that if it's just some sort of challenge behavior, you don't have to tell me about it?
So,
Yeah.
but we don't teach them that though, like the school environment doesn't teach them, like, it's not a big deal, if you just threw a paper at your head, just let it go, like, you know, like, we tell them that it's like bad, it shouldn't be done at all. And like, I have trouble with some guys who like, they're not as cool as the other guys, you know, maybe they throw something at them or something, and it becomes a thing, but if it was two popular guys, they're fine, they're just throw the thing until I notice, and I yell at them to stop, that's fine, it's not a problem, they played, and now they're more bonded than ever, or whatever it is. But, you know, some guy with a little lower status, I don't think they're trying to bully him, they're just messing around. But I feel like the school's teaching them it's not messing around, it's, you know, bullying, you know, telling, yeah, so it's weird.
So you think bullying is overused,
I do.
but you administratively, you're having to be careful because you don't want parents saying that this behavior slipped through.
It's just a gray area as to what actually happens on site versus what parents envision is happening at school, because parents will see it as bullying because they don't see the day-to-day interactions that go on between kids. And so it would help if they saw it. And some of them have brothers and they see it at home, or they see siblings doing it. That's the same kind of stuff that happens in bonding. But we just have to keep it at a minimum. And with the boy who wants to tell and say, you know, the way I deal is, thank you very much, let me look into it. And it isn't, you know, you just say, hey, thanks for looking out for him. Let me see if it's a bullying situation, and then we go from there. So that's how we deal with it. But I think you're right. Next year, there needs to be more talk about it. So more interaction. We have an intervention coordinator working with our RJ. And so I think we're going to talk more. We're going to do more talks in the parent center. We're going to do more talks in professional development for the teachers to distinguish between the two and to understand that these kids understand what the differences are.
Yeah, that's really smart. And then send it out to the parents. Right, send it out to the parents about, okay, here's the line, here's the distinction, here's how we define bullying. So just because your son or daughter comes home and says, well, so hurt my feelings, that may not be bullying, right? I mean, to some extent, we have to, as a nation, try to figure out the difference between my feelings got hurt and what actually happened in reality, right? In reality, a guy may have been throwing a piece of paper at another kid who is weaker than him in order to try to lift him up, which is what siblings do constantly, older siblings. And it's amazing to me that all parents will allow their kids at home to do 1,000 things that they won't want the school to let them do at school. But at home, our kids are beating on each other, right? I mean, let's be honest. Like my two daughters, who are two of the best daughters in the world, would spend constant time in the back seat of the car punching each other. And it sort of made sense to me. I figured, well, they're punching each other. At some point, they'll learn to curse and they'll stop. But of course, we're not going to have that in the school. We can't have kids punching each other at school, so I'm not suggesting that. But I think we do allow a lot of stuff at home. But then when the kids get in school, we think the school has to be perfect, or we misinterpret what the school is doing. And the school exists to sort through all this. It doesn't exist to be perfect. And it shouldn't be perfect. So we parents are going to have to give the school permission to allow stuff to go on. Okay, go ahead.
How does the boys play video games?
Video games, yeah.
Is that because of that side of the brain, the visual, spatial?
Yeah.
Is there a need to limit how much?
Yes. Okay. So the question is on boys playing video games. The book Saving Our Sons has a whole chapter on it, and I do all the science. So if you want to check the science, I'm going to make a statement, and you may think I'm wrong, but I've got all the science. So males obviously are very attracted to video games because of the right side, because they're visual graphic and they're spatial mechanical. So they're the perfect thing for the male brain. He's forced in one environment, in school, to be very left and words. Then he comes home and he wants to be right. He wants to activate his visual, and he plays a lot of video games. And he activates testosterone, right? It's competitive, so testosterone is activated, and he moves up, and that means dopamine is activated, which is the reward chemical. So it's perfect. But the problem is that it's a kind of false existence. So it can retard brain development. And so I do, a lot of it has to do with the age. So like, you know, a 5, 6, 7-year-old, I would say like almost none. And in fact, very little screen time for that age. But of course, in middle school is when they're playing a lot of it. And I'm begging parents, no video games on school nights. It doesn't even matter if they're A students, because an hour or 2 of video games on school nights will get added on to an hour on the smartphone, 2 hours of TV, whatever, or online. That's 5 or 6 hours. It's just too many hours of screen time for an 11-year-old brain. It's going to harm that brain. So, so I'm not anti-video games, but they're not a good idea, and especially if the child is having any problems in school or in society, socializing. We got to be very careful because the parts of the brain that video games stimulates, there are 2 things that happen. One thing is it raises the dopamine level so that the brain thinks that it succeeded. But all it really did, obviously, is move from one level to another in a video game. So it wasn't really developing that brain's ability to raise social status in society or to relate or to bond. Even if it's interactive, it's not doing much of that. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is that it's just using so much of the brain's screen time that the brain prunes away cells for social emotional growth. So in males, the thing that gets sacrificed is social emotional growth. So SEL, social emotional learning. That's the thing that gets sacrificed because we have fewer fail-safes for that than the female brain. A lot of the female brain is set up to read facial cues and read social cues and to interact. And we need our males to get more training in that, especially at middle school age. Video games is an hour or 2 of not getting that. And it can erase some of those brain centers. So the video games are fun. They're a great way for dads and sons to bond, and we don't want to get rid of that, but we want to be careful. So in Saving Our Sons, and actually 2 or 3 of my previous books, I just kind of lay it out by age groups and say, here are some targets. You know, a 12-year-old brain is different than a 2-year-old brain, is different than a 22-year-old brain. So let's handle each brain developmentally. Okay, I'm getting the sense to end because you want to do a wrap. Don't you?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up a couple of these things. And but any last questions for Dr. Gurian? Anybody have any comments? Concerns?
Okay, as a parent, I really believe that you, the teachers, supervisors, need to implement maybe more cameras around the school so to prevent bullying. So I believe that bullying starts with a little job or with a word. Little by little, they get to a big fight and to be more about it. So maybe there's a resistance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that your concern of bullying is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. Mostly what we build in here is culture. If you have a strong culture where children are not afraid to tell people what's going on, for instance, school shootings. If you have a strong culture, there's always warning signs. There's always signs generally that they're going to tell somebody they trust. Starting with the principal, starting with the assistant principal, all the way down to the teachers. Somebody, they say, you know, this doesn't look right. For instance, we had a couple of phones taken, students' photos. Just happened a couple of days ago. So these are things that will be said in cultures where trust is there, that they feel like this is a family. We can't put video cameras around the campus in the common areas because there's problems with that. We will be putting some cameras in front of the school because we've had issues out there with community members, with tagging, writing on the walls. So I think there could be some more video surveillance cameras. That won't necessarily solve the bullying problem because the kids know there's cameras there, this over here. So it mostly has to be a culture. But I agree with you. I think it's something that we need to keep building on, which is why we have more help with discipline next year. We have somebody that's handling that, who is trained to talk to kids, to get that information from the kids. Thank you for bringing that up. We will be addressing it.
Go ahead.
So, I want to thank Dr. Gurian. Thank you so much for sharing.
Some numbers between 1 and